Okay, so this is just video of me driving through Indiana. I don't have any from winter yet because every time it snowed, either the snow was gone pretty much the next day, or it was pretty bad for a couple of days. There wasn't like a sweet spot where there was like the beautiful snow coverage, but hopefully we'll get another good storm, especially since Stranger Things is shot in Georgia. I thought I would have a little Indiana in here as just background, because I still don't know how to import video clips from the show, so it's just going to be stills. But what I wanted to talk about today is I've been wanting to drive out to Fairmont, Indiana, which is a small town. I think it's about an hour outside of Indianapolis where I live. I spent a lot of summers here, and watching the show, and especially like season 3 where they're going to the mall, it reminds me of things like there's a place I pass called Indiana Lighting Center that's actually in the middle of being torn down now, but it's been there as long as I can remember. Like, I remember seeing it like 40 years ago when I was like a little kid coming here. And then I remember driving past it in the rain. I think I've mentioned this in another video. Driving past it in the rain the day I went to see Purple Rain at the Lafayette Square Mall, which is now, I don't know if it's defunct, but it is deserted every time I drive by. So I got to thinking about how I wanted to drive out to Fairmont, and the reason I wanted to drive out to Fairmont is because that's James Dean's hometown. James Dean is probably one of the most famous Indiana natives. I think certainly the coolest and the most iconic. I mean, there's definitely other people like, Michael Jackson is from Indiana. Florence Henderson, like I always keep track of my Hoosiers. Anyway, so there's a lot of cool Hoosiers that have made a big impact on the culture. Cole Porter comes to mind also. I think I'm pretty sure he's from here. There's a Cole Porter exhibit in the Historical Society. So this is Indianapolis and going to the, nearby suburbs. So it is, I think I'm driving back from the suburbs in this video. This is not what the little small towns look like, but I will put some pictures throughout this video of James Dean's hometown of Fairmont, and then also another small town that I went to outside of Lafayette, Indiana, because I was doing genealogical research. My 4th great grandfather died in the Civil War. The town that he's in, I went to see the records. I'll have some pictures of that town too. I don't have video of either place because last time I visited those places was in 2019, which is my last trip to Indiana before this. But, Hawkins sort of reminds me of both towns. There's just the little, main shopping area, with City Hall and everything is just right downtown, little walkable center of town. And then there's farms and things on the outskirts. Like I drove by the farm where James Dean grew up after his mother died. But, James Dean, I think fairly famously, was queer in some ways. Some people think he was gay. He did have a relationship with an actress, and there's a famous story where he was outside the church when she got married, like revving his motorcycle. So he may have been bisexual. I don't know. There are all sorts of sort of lurid rumors about things that he was into as well. I'm not going to get into that. I think he dated Eartha Kitt at one time too. He's not just the coolest person to probably come out of Indiana, but I mean, still an icon to this day, over 50 years after he died. I'm sorry, it's 70 years after he died. Gosh. If for no other reason than this show being set in Indiana, and there is such an icon from this state who was queer, let's do it for Jimmy. Byler has to be true for so many reasons, but for people like James Dean who couldn't be out in the 40s and the 50s in Indiana or even in New York City, think of that. I'm sure there were definitely, gay bars and things like that then, but you could also be arrested. James Dean, who's given us like all this style to reflect on, all this amazing acting that he did in such a brief time before he died, he deserved better. And the kids in the 80s, like Will and Mike, that are characters, those are real kids. There's real kids that went through those things. growing up in small towns in Indiana and other places that were conservative, and honestly in California, it wasn't acceptable to be gay back then. This is a story that not only does it make the most sense to end with Byler, but people deserve it. Kids now, queer kids now, straight kids now need to see a sweet, innocent story of two boys falling in love. And so do queer kids. Absolutely. And people of my generation, Gen X, who are the same age as the characters, I think it'll be very healing for their little inner gay kid. Didn't get to have that didn't get to express that didn't get to marry the person that they loved when they were young, who maybe lost years, who got into a heterosexual marriage or did things that, they didn't want to do because they were having to hide to be safe. I think that some of the discussion around Stranger Things and how Mike couldn't possibly be gay or bi, couldn't possibly be interested in Will because he dated Elle. Well, first of all, bisexuals exist, and second of all, many gay people have dated and been in heterosexual relationships. Fran Drescher was married, I think, for over 20 years to a man that later came out as gay. I had a boss in New York who was married to a man, but before he was married to a man, he was married to a woman and had 3 children. The arguments are so idiotic, but when I think about James Dean, when I think about all the amazing, talented people who had to hide, who had to spend their whole life hiding, pretending, fearing discovery, fearing being caught, arrested, beaten, killed, all sorts of horrific things that could happen to you just for being gay. It's insane. It's insane that people in this day and age are saying it's a fantasy that Mike is gay and it's a weird fetish, or all the horrible comments I'm seeing, especially in the Stranger Things Reddit, where people just get downvoted and blocked for Byler-related discussions, even though it's a general Reddit that, other discussions are welcome. So gross. You're actually proving the reason why that needs to be the end game, or one of the many reasons that needs to be the end game, by harassing the people who have seen the signs. It's just also incredible that you're missing the whole point of the show is to not be a bigot, and all the relationships are transgressive in some way. There's an interracial relationship, there's 2 divorced parents, there's class differences between Nancy and Jonathan. She could have been with Steve, that would have been someone more like her. No, she chose Jonathan. So tell me why. And the one very, nuclear, couple, actually 2 that we've now seen, because we've seen the Turnbows, the Wheelers are miserable. They don't seem to communicate. The husband puts down the wife. He's kind of an absent father. He is only, he has very little to do with his children except kind of criticize them and make homophobic remarks at Mike and put down his wife. So that's your one heterosexual, typical nuclear family, and it's not something that anyone sane would want. Sorry.